After spending 17 years as a CPA and 5 of those years in my own practice working as a fractional CFO for multi-million-dollar med spas, if I were starting my own med spa, HRT, or integrative medicine practice from scratch today, here's exactly what I would do to make sure it was profitable and sustainable from the beginning. Because I've seen what the most successful practices do, and I've also seen what leads to cash flow disasters. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the system that separates the two. I'm Chelsea Zania, and I work specifically with med spas, HRT, and other wellness practice owners to build the financial systems they need to run a profitable practice and make decisions based on actual data versus guesswork. Most practice owners either hire a bookkeeper or attempt it themselves and call it a day. And I totally get it because you're busy, you're running your own practice, you're probably still working at a clinic job somewhere else, and just recording the transactions feels like it should be enough. But bookkeeping is only one small piece of your financial picture, okay? So I want you to think about it this way. Your practice has 3 major pillars: your clinical operations, your marketing, and finance. And just like you wouldn't ignore your clinical operations or the marketing, you can't afford to have a halfway approach to your finances either. But having said that, it doesn't mean that it needs to be overly complex or really difficult to manage. So by the end of this video, you're going to have a complete understanding of the simple 3-part system that I use with every single practice owner I work with to help them actually manage their finances and not just record them. I call it the EPT system, and EPT stands for Evaluate, Plan, Track. And when all 3 parts are working together, you stop guessing and you start running your practice like an actual business owner. I want you to stick around because I'm also going to share something toward the end of this video that most practice owners in their first couple years of practice ownership completely overlook, and it's the piece that actually drives momentum every single week. Let's start with why this matters right now. Med spas, HRT, integrative medicine, and other cash-based wellness practices are growing fast. The demand is real, the opportunity is real, but so is the competition. And as the market gets more crowded and becomes saturated, the practices that survive and thrive aren't necessarily the practices with the best providers or the most beautiful spaces. They're the practices that are run like real businesses with real financial data driving real decisions. If you're in your first 1 to 2 years of practice ownership, and maybe you're still working somewhere else part-time, you are in a critical window right now. Because the financial habits and systems that you build right now will determine whether your practice becomes something profitable and sustainable that can truly support you and support all of your next big moves, whether that's jumping in full-time and replacing your current salary, hiring your first provider, investing in that first device, or expanding into a new location. And getting this right early changes everything. So let's get into the EPT system. The E stands for evaluate. Just like you wouldn't treat a patient without checking their vitals first, you can't really make smart decisions in your practice without knowing what's actually going on with your numbers. And this is where most practice owners are flying blind. They might know their revenue number, they have a good sense of whether things feel good or not, but feeling good and being profitable are 2 very different things. And I've sat across from enough fully booked practice owners who weren't able to pay themselves to know that revenue alone tells you almost nothing, okay? Evaluating your practice means looking at 4 specific numbers on a regular basis. Along with sales, you need to know your gross profit margin, your net profit margin, and your net cash flow. These 4 numbers are the vital signs of your practice, and if they're healthy, your strategy is working. If one is off, then you know exactly where to dig in. No more guessing or not knowing what to look for. I did a whole video on these 4 numbers, your targets, what you're looking for, in a separate video, so I'll put a link to that below. But beyond these 4 numbers, evaluating your practice also means understanding which of your treatments are actually driving profit and which ones may be actually draining your resources. I've worked with plenty of practice owners who were heavily promoting a service that had a terrible margin, not because they were making a bad decision on purpose, but just because they never had the data to know better. They were setting their prices based on competitors in the area, and I will just tell you, as more clinicians enter the market, they are competing on price versus quality, and that is a race to the bottom. You want to compete on quality and then price accordingly. So you need to have a clear understanding of your margins by treatment. Most of you also have big moves you want to make. You're wanting to take a consistent paycheck, invest in a new device, hire another provider, or any other investment for that matter. You need to know the level of sales that you need to generate based on your specific margins in order to make that happen. And you also need to have a clear understanding of what your current revenue capacity is. So more simply, you need to be able to answer the question of how much money do I need to make in order to do the thing that I want to do, and how much money am I capable of making with the provider hours, and capacity that I have right now. All of this falls under that evaluate step, and it might sound like a lot, but once you put these simple systems in place, you can keep up with it in 30 minutes or less a week. It's really not complex or overly difficult to get done. Speaking of big moves, if you are sitting on a decision right now about hiring, going full-time, investing in a device, expanding your practice, or whatever else, and you want to know if you're actually ready to do that financially, that's exactly what a clarity call is for. It's a free, no obligation conversation where we talk about where your practice stands right now and figure out your next best steps together. Sometimes that's implementing the full EPT system inside the Peak Profit Accelerator, and sometimes it's something simpler to start. Either way, you'll walk away knowing exactly what to do next. The link to book that call is in the description below, but make sure you come right back because the most important part of the EPT system is next. The P in EPT stands for planning, and it's arguably the most important part. And I want to be really clear about what planning means because it is not budgeting. I've said it before and I'll say it again, traditional budgeting doesn't work for med spas and wellness practice owners because it's reactive. You set numbers at the beginning of the month and then you go back after it's already ended to see how you did, and by that point, it's too late to change anything. Planning is forward-looking. It's about deciding in advance what you want to happen and then managing your finances toward that outcome in real time. So for a practice owner, planning has 3 components. First is your cash flow and saving strategy. And this is how you stop operating at break even and start building those cash reserves to build toward whatever big decisions or big moves you have coming. So whether that's hiring, investing in that device, all those things that we've been talking about, or even just knowing that your practice can sustain a slow month without a crisis. Second is your weekly cash management system that executes the strategy, okay? This also becomes your new decision-making tool. It's how you always know what's available to spend, what's set aside, and what's actually coming home with you. Third is your 12-month financial forecast. This is the bird's eye view that helps you plan your year at a higher level. You can actually see when the right time is to pull the trigger on any of those decisions, and it's how sustainable growth happens. You do it intentionally by putting numbers to all of your plans. Moving on, the T in EPT stands for track, and this is the one that most practice owners either skip altogether or they just take a glance at that dashboard in their EMR system and they don't use it to actually build momentum. But here's what I've seen consistently after years of working with practice owners. What you focus on, you fix. So if you pay attention to a few key metrics, you will make improvements to those numbers every single week. Tracking for a practice owner has 2 pieces, okay? So the first is the weekly scorecard at the practice level. And so if you are a solopreneur, this is going to be the only scorecard you use. It is a simple tool that tells you every single week whether you're moving towards your goals or you're drifting off course and you need to get back on track. You're going to pick a few important numbers that you want to improve for your practice, and you're going to be looking at them every single week. The key is to focus on somewhere between 3 to 6 metrics at the practice level. Any more than that, and you will lose focus and you won't see improvements because you'll be too scattered. I like to start every client off with the number of new clients, sales in dollars, your consultation close percentage, or some people call it your conversion percentage, and utilization. You should be comparing actuals to the goals you have set for those every single week. The second type of scorecard is the employee scorecard if you have a team. Your providers and staff need to know what you expect of them and how they're contributing to the practice. They cannot hit a target that they don't know about. Scorecards will keep your team focused and accountable in a way that doesn't require you to micromanage them because now they know their expectations. Now, I do recommend that you only track 2 to 3 metrics per employee at a time because, again, you don't want to scatter their focus here. You want them working to improve a few things at a time, and you can always change these metrics over time, but start with 2 to 3. Tracking a few key metrics for your practice and employees using scorecards every single week is what actually drives momentum and improvement in your practice. You will see a shift in yourself and your employees' performance as soon as you implement them. Here's what I want you to understand about the EPT system as a whole. These 3 steps are not 3 separate projects, okay? They work together as one connected system. Evaluate gives you the data, plan gives you the direction, and track keeps you on course. And here's the thing about where med spas and wellness practices are headed. The market is only going to get more competitive. The practices that are going to win are the ones that are making intentional, data-driven decisions to grow profitably, not the ones that are hustling the hardest or seeing the most patients. Harder is not the answer. Smarter is, and the EPT system is how you get there. If you watched this video and the EPT system really resonates with you and you're thinking, I really need this in my practice, the next best step is a clarity call. Again, it's a free, no obligation conversation where we're going to talk about where your practice is now and what the next best steps for you might be. Whether that's implementing the EPT strategy through our Peak Profit Accelerator or something simpler, you're going to leave the call with your next best steps. No pressure, no pitch, just clarity. The link to book is in the description below. But now that you understand the full EPT system, the natural place to start is the evaluate step. And you cannot evaluate what you cannot see. That means before you can look at your 4 key numbers, before you can benchmark your margins, before you can make any data-driven decisions about your practice, your books need to be clean, current, and actually readable. And I know that sounds like a bigger project than it is, so I made a video with 3 simple tips that will make your bookkeeping completely manageable and actually useful for running your practice. That's linked above, so watch that next.